everybody, for coming back. Next up, we have TJ Wallace. TJ is the Assistant Director for the South Carolina Humanities. She's a graduate of Furman University. She completed a year of service with the AmeriCorps program, City Year of Columbia in 2005. She graduated from Francis Marion University's Nonprofit Leadership Institute in 2009. The United Way of the Midlands Blueprint for Leadership in 2019, Leadership Columbia in 2021, and the Riley Institute's Diversity Leaders Initiative in 2013. TJ has volunteered extensively with the Midlands Reading Consortium, Palmetto Lifeline, I don't know where the rescue text came from, Lake Carolina Elementary School, where she serves as the School Improvement Council, and Girl Scout Troop 1098. TJ grew up in Orlando, Florida, and now lives in Columbia with her husband, Joey. There are 3 children, a golden retriever, 3 cats, and a leopard gecko. This is my favorite. She never says no to a nap. TJ, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I would love to just hear where everybody in the room is from. I always like to get a sense of which libraries you're representing or counties you're representing, so I can tailor what I'm sharing a little bit more. So we'll start at the front.
Lexington.
Great.
Richland.
Yeah. Okay.
Richland. Lexington. Southampton. Richland.
Okay.
Pittsburgh, Leesville.
Awesome. Is Batesburg, Leesville part of the Lexington system? Okay, so it's just Richland and Lexington and counties here. Okay, that's good to know. All right, well, I am here representing South Carolina Humanities. We are the state program of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and we are primarily federally funded. South Carolina Humanities is a nonprofit organization. I actually did a presentation yesterday at the South Carolina Federation for Museums Conference with Amber Westbrook from the South Carolina Arts Commission, and they're a state agency. South Carolina Humanities is not. When back in the 60s, when Congress created the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities as 2 different federal agencies, and kind of drew a line between the arts and the humanities, and then the different states developed their local organizations. All of the state humanities councils are nonprofit organizations around the country. We were founded in 1972, and so we just celebrated our 50th anniversary through last year through 2023. And we're a statewide organization with offices located in Columbia. So this is probably one of the trickiest parts about what we do is, like we were saying yesterday, everybody seems to understand what the arts are. Not everybody understands what the humanities are. At our office, we get calls for the Humane Society. We get calls for the Human Affairs Commission. We get calls for Habitat for Humanity. Randy, my boss, worked at the Florida Humanities Council for 5 years before coming to South Carolina, and he swears they would get calls about saving the manatees. So none of those things are the humanities. The humanities are these disciplines: history, literature, folklore, philosophy, comparative religion, archaeology, African American studies, Southern studies, linguistics and language, ethics, jurisprudence, political science, anthropology, international studies, art history, theory and criticism, women's studies, and some aspects of the social sciences when they reflect on like heritage, traditions, or history. And so like we were saying at our session yesterday, trying to help people understand the difference between the arts and the humanities, because of that division on the federal level between the National Endowment for the Humanities and the National Endowment for the Arts, we, South Carolina Humanities, are mandated to fund humanities programs, not arts programs. But there is overlap, and you can see that in the list of art, history, theory, and criticism. One of the best ways I've ever heard the difference between the arts and the humanities in terms of what we can fund versus like what the Arts Commission can fund has also been shared by my boss, Randy. He says, artists do, humanists talk about it. So South Carolina Humanities, we can't fund any outright artistic creation, artistic performance, or artistic like display, but we can fund the disciplines of art history, art theory, and art criticism, basically people talking about art. talking about the meaning behind the art, the history behind the art, what makes the art important to a community. So for example, we could not fund a performance of Porgy and Bess, but we are right now funding a documentary that talks about the history of Porgy and Bess in South Carolina, why that opera has been so important here. So that's kind of the difference between like what we can fund in terms of arts programs or not. And a lot of South Carolina, so when I was preparing for the presentation yesterday and I was looking at all the grants we funded over like the last 2 years, so many of them have artistic components. But as long as they also have that opportunity for interpretation and discussion, that's what makes it a humanities program. So there is a lot of overlap, and hopefully that is helpful. So South Carolina Humanities, we make a variety of grants available for public humanities programs. So we almost exclusively fund public programs. We have one category of grant, which I'll speak about later, that's for planning, but otherwise the expectation with one of our grants is that you're going to do some kind of public event or program that's going to reach an audience in South Carolina. So some of the traditional types of programs that we would fund, and this is not exclusive: documentaries, exhibits, lecture series, festivals, conferences, oral history programs, discussion forums. We do a lot of reading and discussion programs, or film screening and discussion programs. Some of those take place at libraries. So those are the types of programs we would fund. Some things that South Carolina Humanities cannot fund, other than straight up artistic performance or creation, we cannot fund any capital projects. We can't fund any construction. We don't fund general operating support because it's all supposed to be program-based. We can't fund any programs with a really high ticket price. We're not supposed to fund programs that are like maybe a fundraising event, you know, that you're charging $100 ticket for or something like that. We can't, because of our federal grant funds, we can't fund food and drink for an event. We can fund per diem for scholars. So, you know, if you're bringing somebody in to your library to give a lecture and you need to reimburse them for their mileage and their meal that they had while they were in your community, that would be allowable, but not like a reception at an event. Also, with our federal grant funds, we have to be very careful about not funding anything that advocates for a particular political ideology, religion, or anything like that. So those are some caveats about what we can and can't fund. I'm going to go through our different categories of grants. Our largest grant is our major grant. They're designed to support programs that are larger in scale. The maximum request right now is $15,000. For all of South Carolina Humanities grants, we require a 1-to-1 match because we are using federal grant funds, and that's another requirement from the federal side. So that means that if you're asking us for $15,000, your organization also has to show that you're contributing $15,000 towards the cost of the program for a total program cost of at least $30,000. That's if you're asking us for the full $15,000. That match, or that the cost share that you're showing, is another way to describe it, can be either cash, so like actual cash dollars that your organization is putting into the program, or money from other funders or grants that you've gotten that are supporting that program, or it can be in kind, which is donated time, goods, and services. These are all volunteer groups, yes? Yeah. So y'all have probably a lot of volunteer hours that are worth quite a bit. That can also provide your required match. So the major grants are reviewed twice a year by our full board. We just had a deadline in August. Our board is going to be making decisions about those next week. And then for that August deadline, programs have to start after November 1st. And then our next deadline that's ahead of us is January 10th for programs that start after March 15th. Guidelines and application information are available on our website. I will say that we are going to be doing a big transition this fall, starting basically like October 1st, to having an online grant management system. South Carolina Humanities, we apparently were a dinosaur in that we were still accepting paper applications emailed to me. I would email them to our board. They would email me their votes. It's, you know, it was not the most fluid process. I went to the National Humanities Conference last year in October, and sat in on a session that was all grants officers from all the different humanities councils all over the state. They did a little warm up where they were doing like 4 corners, like, oh, go stand in this corner if your council does things this way, that way, that way. They had one where they were like, grants management, this kind of grants management online system, that kind, something else, and if you do anything else, go stand in that corner. I was in that corner by myself. They were like, what do you do? And I was like, paper, PDFs, and the emails, and they were like, oh man. So we are moving to the online grants management system this fall. So I think it's pretty user-friendly. It's the same online grants management system that the South Carolina Arts Commission uses actually, and many of the state humanities councils across the country. It's pretty user-friendly. And there will be tutorials and things that I'll be adding to our website over the next month to help people know how to make an account and how to use that process. But it will be a little bit different. It came from the friends groups from Richland or Lexington counties apply to us, but Richland Library has applied for a lot of grants. So things are gonna be a little different next time you apply. These are some examples of some major grants that we funded recently. I did try to pull some library examples there on the next slide, but these two are Coastal Carolina University's Bella Beach Community Day. It was a big festival with vendors, presentations, genealogy workshops, and things like that. The Hagen Mill Historic Site in Pickens, they got a major grant to work on their field trip options that they offer both on-site, and they created new virtual field trip packages for some of that funding. And here's a couple of library examples. The Georgetown County Library is currently, they have an open grant with us presenting a series of public programs celebrating their 225th anniversaries with a bunch of lectures on a variety of topics about Georgetown County's past, present, history, culture, foodways. It's really impressive list of programs that going through November, I think. And then a grant that we gave to Richmond Library that happened in March of 2023, where they did poetry workshops with colleges and high schools, and then had a big culminating event at the library. Those are some things that receive major grants. South Carolina Humanities has been offering for like the last 12 to 15 years always a themed request for proposals. Our board identifies a theme that they're interested in, and we offer grant opportunities on that for a year or two. It's almost exactly the same as the major grant in terms of deadlines. The maximum request is $15,000. It's just if you come in through this process, you would be actually answering the topic that they're interested in, which at this time is innovation in the humanities, shining a cultural light on technology and change. It's not exactly that your project would get special consideration if you came in through the themed request for proposals, but sort of, because it is something that our board had identified that they were interested in. So the application would be reviewed at the same time as regular major grants, and decisions would be made in the same schedule. So,
instead of 1-for-1 is final.
yes, all of our grants require a 1-to-1 match. I should have put that on there, but yes. That's not been a popular topic. I've not gotten really many applications. This is an example of a project that came in under our previous theme, which was SCH at 50 in honor of our 50th anniversary, and asking about change in South Carolina over the last 50 years. And this was a film that the Fountain Museum created that was looking at change in their community. Probably, our next theme is probably gonna be about the Revolutionary War. Really kind of so our next category of grant are our mini grants and our planning grants. They are very similar in that they are both a maximum request of $5,000. They both require that 1-to-1 match. They both have the same deadline, which is they're reviewed monthly, and the deadline is always the first business day of any given month. So the next deadline is October 1st, and that would be for programs that start after November 15th. And the next one will be November 1st for programs that start after December 15th, and so on. The difference between mini and planning grants is that mini grants are for an actual public program, usually maybe something a little smaller than what you would fund with a major grant, maybe bringing a couple of speakers or a smaller community event or something like that. Planning grants are to support preliminary work in designing a project that warrants detailed planning because of its length, scope, or cost. We've awarded planning grants fairly frequently for documentary film projects that are in the pre-production phase of scripting and initial research. We've awarded planning grants, even for like strategic planning for cultural organizations that are trying to get started or trying to maybe do something new and shift their focus. That's some ways that people have used planning grants. I pulled this example of a mini grant that was actually the South Carolina Academy of Authors applied for and received the funding, but it took place at the Beaufort County Library, their annual biennial induction weekend. So that was just kind of an example to show maybe your library doesn't have to be the applicant, but you may be a partner in a project that we would fund and benefit from it that way. Another example of a mini grant we funded recently was to Kids on Point in Charleston County for a civil rights history camp, week-long summer enrichment program for high school students. Really well received. All right, we have our fast track literary grants. These are used fairly frequently by libraries. They are intended to support new or existing public literary programs such as writer series, festivals, conferences, workshops, or writers' residencies at schools. Where they're presented in partnership with the South Carolina Arts Commission. They have a maximum request of $5,000. That just went up with our most recent deadline. It used to be $3,000. The applications are reviewed quarterly, so the next deadline is December 1st for programs that start after January 15th, or then March 2nd for programs that start after April 15th. And there'll be deadlines in June and September next year as well. The nice thing about the partnership with the South Carolina Arts Commission is just like the National Endowment for the Humanities says we can't do, we can't support outright artistic creation of paintings or something like that. They also consider creative writing to be an art rather than the humanities. So a lot of our fast track literary grant programs may have an element of creative writing associated with it. Like we just funded a grant for the Poetry Society of South Carolina where they're doing both poets are presenting their work and talking about their work. That's a clear humanities program, but they also have poetry workshops as well. So that's creative writing and that would be arts. So we're able to use our South Carolina Arts Commission funding that we get from them each year to kind of support elements or projects that do have that creative writing element that we wouldn't normally be able to support with our NEH money. We're grateful for them. And here's some examples of fast track literary events that take place at libraries. The York County Libraries, one adult Comic-Con. They actually did one in 2024 too. I should have updated that, but that we supported. And then the Aiken County Public Library is currently presenting a book and film discussion series titled Modern Southern Novels on Page and Screen. It's in the Let's Talk About It format, which is a program we used to offer but is now defunct, but they bring in scholars to talk about the books and the films with the group that is there to discuss them. This is our newest category of grant that we started last year in November. Accessibility and inclusion grants are intended to support making public humanities programs and collections more accessible to diverse public audiences. The funds can be used for things like translation and captioning services, ASL interpreters, materials for the visually impaired, student transportation expenses, or things like even childcare to make programs more accessible to families. That's not a complete list. I've seen some other creative ideas come through since we started this grant. The one main thing, and the maximum request is $2,000, so you wouldn't be able to do much construction with that anyway, but we cannot support any kind of construction, so we wouldn't be able to support like creating a ramp or a more accessible bathroom or anything like that. It's to make the programs more accessible. And those are accepted on a rolling basis. Then our Speakers Bureau is a program that's very well used by libraries. We have a roster of over 40 scholars with like more than 150 different speaking topics ranging from things like growing up Gullah to Chautauqua style historical impersonations of major historical figures like Abraham Lincoln. It's a simple one-page application form. It's also available on our website already you can submit online for that. we pay $350 directly towards the speaker for an approved program. So no money would transfer between South Carolina Humanities and your friends group or your library, because we pay the speaker directly. We do still require that one-to-one match. Not hard to find $350 in match when you consider even like the space you're using at your library and what that's worth. What do I want to say about this? So we do ask for the applications at least 4 weeks in advance of the program date, and you can have 2 per year. We are flexible with that sometimes, especially with large library systems like y'all's that have multiple branches. But probably each branch, so more than 2 for all of Lexington County, more than 2 for all of Richland County, but probably not 2 per branch. That might be getting a little extreme. But if you have 3 or 4 throughout the system, throughout the year, or something like that, that would be fine. In fact, I think we have 2 upcoming in Lexington County library branches. One is at the Casey. I'm not sure what the other one is. In the next month or so. Any questions about this issue?
You have to have, transcripts are usually 501c3 and the library is usually just actively 501c3 to apply for this, or can it be a different entity?
We say that we give grants and program grants like these to nonprofit organizations and 501c3 and public agencies. So that's what libraries fall under. Sometimes we get applications from towns as well, or government entities. So as long as you're not a for-profit organization.
Question.
Yes.
If we wanted someone to come speak on some portion of South Carolina, do you provide that person, or do we find the person?
So you do have to use, for this program, you have to use one of our vetted speakers. We have over 40 of them. So you would look at our roster and see, maybe find a couple of people who sound interesting to you, and then you would contact me to get their contact information. We don't publish their contact information on our website for privacy reasons. Then you would reach out to them and make the arrangements, confirm their interest and availability. Then you would fill out the application once you've confirmed, with the speaker that they want to come to your organization, and then you would submit the application.
I have a question back before you open to the public. I would assume, do you advertise it as free and open to the public, or you just let people come in and assume, like in a public library, people can come in?
Yeah, all the ones at libraries seem to always be free and open to the public. We don't specifically advertise that. I mean, we do advertise the programs that we help fund. We'll put them on our calendar. We include them in our weekly newsletter. If there was something where it was not open to the public. In various cases, like we do fund programs at schools, and we fund programs at retirement communities. So those are not really open to the public, but they're reaching a specific audience that needs programming. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there, but what we try not to do is fund programs for like exclusive clubs or groups that aren't gonna publicize the event or have it open to audiences. Okay. All right, this is one of my favorite programs that we do. It's our partnership with the Smithsonian Institution. One of their divisions there is called Museum on Main Street. They design exhibits that are specially created for small cultural organizations, small towns, and rural audiences that maybe lack regular access to traveling exhibitions due to space and cost limitations. So we contract directly with the Smithsonian to bring traveling Smithsonian exhibits to the state. The exhibits are designed to be low security. They're very adaptable to a variety of spaces, but they're very high quality, as you would expect coming from the Smithsonian. And we've been doing this program since 2004. I think this is our 9th traveling exhibit that we've brought. It's called Spark, Places of Innovation. It's traveling right now. It's going to open at the Marlborough County Museum on Saturday. We've had libraries participate in this program we don't have any libraries this round, but almost every other exhibit that we've brought to the state has had at least one library host. Libraries make great hosts for these traveling exhibits because people are coming to your library for a variety of things, and then they maybe stumble across this exhibit and get to see it, which is great. So our next traveling Smithsonian exhibit is going to be about Native American and how their stories are a part of our history and in our contemporary life, how their images are used and things like that. It's called Americans. It will tour South Carolina in 2026, but we give a year of planning to the sites that are selected. So applications are going to be accepted starting in 2020, probably or pretty early in 2025, like February or March, so that we can identify the local sites. Now, those exhibits are intended to go to communities that are small. They're supposed to be 20,000 or less. For this tour right now, Greenwood and Aiken are a little bit more than that. So with Richland and Lexington counties, it may be some of your branch libraries would fit that. Not your main branch, but I don't know how big Lexington is, but usually it's supposed to be 20,000 or less residents. Is kind of, that's where the Smithsonian has kind of seen, if you have a community much bigger than that, it's not as special or important to them. It's a small community. So about like Batesburg, Louisville.
Some of the smaller things for sure.
Yeah. We've had one of these traveling exhibits go to the Blythewood Historical Museum, but like the Blythewood branch of the Richland County Library or the Lower Richland branch, right?
How large a room would be like that?
They're usually like between 700 to 850 square feet. Like this room would be big enough. They come in like freestanding kiosks that are like they're like panels, but you can like walk around them or sometimes inside them to look at all the different images. They have all sorts of cool multimedia components. Each new exhibit that they develop has like more and more, like they're always learning how to do new things and add touchscreens and different interactives and things like that. So
Well, the smaller branches like ours, we don't have this kind of room.
yeah,
Largest area we have would be like half of that, this room right here, you know, like all those things too, and all that space there. Would that be large enough?
it would depend on the square footage. I have seen one library put it up in the middle of their stacks. It wasn't even in a meeting room. It was just kind of like out in the library. But yeah, you can consider whether it's something that would work for your library or your branch or not. But like a couple of the smaller branches of the Spartanburg County Public Library System hosted them. The Landrum branch, the Cowpens branch. It may or may not work for your branches. Some other programs that South Carolina Humanities offer, I'm sorry, I'm going over to. We have our annual our Humanities Awards in the Humanities Luncheon and Award Ceremony. That's coming up on Wednesday, October 23rd. We'll be honoring 6 different individuals who've done outstanding things in the humanities. Excuse me, in South Carolina. We also sponsor a Humanities Festival every year. We just had it last week in North Augusta. And then we have partnered with the South Carolina State Museum, created 2 traveling exhibits of our own. They are not as fancy as the ones that come from the Smithsonian. They're all wall hung. They're like panels that you have to hang on a wall. But the 2 that we've helped develop are South Carolina, the Food We Celebrate, and Resilience and Revolution, Native Peoples in 18th Century South Carolina. And they are part of the they're part of the State Museum's traveling exhibition program. So the State Museum has a variety of different traveling exhibits that they rent and that can travel the state. And these are 2 that we've helped create content for. And that's all. I'm glad to answer any questions.
I have a quick question. The applications, do they require just a tax ID number, or do you need to have the unique identifier now?
We do require a unique UEI for all of our grants, except for the Speakers Bureau, because we're paying a speaker and not the organization. But we do need the UEI for all of our other grants. You can actually apply without having your UEI confirmed, but if you receive a grant, you would have to give us your UEI before we could issue awarded funds. Most districts have UEI.
The Friends of South Carolina Libraries applied for the Humanities grant, and we had to do the UEI. We got hung up a little bit because we don't have a physical location. So it was hard to kind of, because all the bank statements for the BOI, you had to have something that had a physical location. So we talked to the state library and they were like, yeah, just use us, because we don't kind of always been de facto place. That's where all our records
All
are.
of our back files and all stored there, so.
But we didn't have anything like official, so it took a little while and it took a couple of hoops, but we did finally get it. I'll be honest, I danced around a little while. Once I got the confirmation, I did some dancing.
That whole process,
But once it's done, it's done. You never have to do it again. You just get the number.
That's why it's called,
UEI, Unique Entity ID. It kind of replaced the DUNS number. It's a number the federal government uses to track where their funds are going.
That's one of the things that I think a lot of friends would have problems with, is having a physical address.
And what is the documentation say?
And what is documentation?
Which is interesting because you would have thought the EIN would probably work. So I guess we kind of figured
No,
out.
yeah, we gotta have multiple.
We just use our brains. I think that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But FOSCL didn't
That's
have.
all a lot. We use the state.
Right, it was so.
Well, we sort of use the state library, but that's the state library. It's, no.
Well, TJ, if anybody has any questions, we can go to the website.
Yes, sorry, I should have, forgetting to bring my cards anywhere, but yes. Our website is schumanities.org. I'm TJ Wallace. TJ Wallace at schumanities.org is my email address. I would be glad to answer any questions. Try to make myself very accessible. I'm glad to have a consultation with you. I'm glad to read a draft application. Like that. Even as we shift into this online grants management system, we're still going to try to be super personable like we always.
This.